Hi, my name is Ned Koch. I am preparing this video to be linked to this blog post. It's a revised blog post on the Warp Investor blog, so it'll be linked to the end of the post. So this post is about the nonlinear relationship between PE and PEG ratios. And the post essentially makes the argument that PE ratios and PEG ratios, which are related to the PEG ratios, they consider the PE ratio and growth, expected growth in the next 5 years in their calculations. So the PE ratios and the PEG ratios, they are non-linearly related. And there are a few things that you can see here that are interesting. One of them is that if the growth expected in the next 5 years or so is 10% for a particular stock, then a PE ratio that would be considered to be a good or a relatively inexpensive PE ratio is this one, close to 12. And the corresponding PEG ratio is a little over 1. So if you had something like 10 here and 1, you know that the stock price is properly valued. Now, when you have other things, odd things like this one, for example, if the expected growth in the stock is minus 10% in the next 5 years or so. So this is a company that is experiencing a decrease in earnings for the next 5 years or so. Then a inexpensive or a good appropriate PE ratio would be 4.39, and the PEG ratio would be negative 0.43%. I'm sorry, negative 0.43. So let's see how this looks in connection with some stocks. So I am now on Yahoo Finance, and this is the entry for NVIDIA. So let's see, based on our table, let's see if the PE ratio for NVIDIA is indicative of it being too expensive or properly priced. So the PEG ratio here is calculated as the trailing PE, this number here, divided by the growth rate expected in the next 5 years or so. So if the growth rate was 28%, I would have 1 here, but the growth rate is probably significantly higher, and this is why I take this I have this PEG ratio here, 0.63. So this would be the growth rate divided by the P. So it would, if this were to be 1, the PEG ratio, then the expected growth rate would have been 28%. If it is lower than 1, that means that the growth rate is higher than this 28%. More like, since this is close to half or 0.5, it's more like double this number. So we have a growth rate here that would be higher than 50%. Now, if we go to that table on the Warp Investor blog, we see that with a expected growth rate of 50%, a P ratio of 85 would be indicative of the stock being reasonably priced. So 85. So with this PE of a little lower than 30, this stock is properly priced. Now notice one interesting thing though. The trailing PE is the price earnings ratio today. The forward PE is the expected price earnings. So it's the current price with expected earnings a year from now. And you see that the difference is not that large. So this estimate for the next year does not suggest a growth rate of that much, or a 50% growth, because these two numbers are relatively close to one another. You would expect this number to be significantly lower for you to have a 50% growth. So this shorter term estimate is not consistent with the PEG ratio. But based on the PEG ratio and the trailing PE, the stock is properly valued today. Now let's take a look at McDonald's. So for McDonald's, again, you have trailing PE and 4P. They are very similar, so not a lot of growth being expected. And the PEG ratio is 2.43. So if you were to take an expected growth of half this number, if you take this number, divide by an expected growth of 10%, you get something similar to this number here. So that would be essentially an expected growth rate of 10% going forward, and this for the next several years, and then 10% per year of growth. So with an expected growth of 10% per year, a good or properly priced stock would have a P/E ratio of close to 12. And McDonald's has a significantly higher P/E ratio. But there is one thing to consider here about McDonald's, is that it has a premium applied to the PE because it's considered to be a defensive stock. And at a time when stock prices are expensive in general, as is the case today, defensive stocks, they tend to have a premium, which is expressed in this PE expansion that we have here. So this would be the way to use this table to see if you can properly price stocks and see which stocks are properly priced and which stocks are not properly priced. And usually you're going to use this table together with other inputs like the graphs of the stock, the variation over time, and so on. So this is what I have for this video. Thank you very much for watching.